aspirations of our people, seizes the opportunities before us because we see them, because we believe in them, and then invents the future. That is what we have always done. And that is what we must now do. And I know we will. I thank you all for inviting me. May God bless you. May God bless the United States of America.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris about 24 hours ago in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a speech laying out her economic vision for America. The vice president has made at least 8 visits to the must-win battleground since launching her campaign. Polling averages show Harris leading by less than 1%. Let's bring into our conversation Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. It strikes me that we got to know you, our audience got to know you, when you were Pennsylvania's Attorney General and when the ex-president was challenging his rather sizable defeat in the Commonwealth. Just tell me with an eye toward his antics last time and what you describe in a podcast as essentially a tie in Pennsylvania. How is the state preparing for what we know Trump will try to do again? Claim he won if he lost and potentially cheat.
Yeah. Well, as you recall, last time Donald Trump did everything he could to first try and make it harder for certain people to vote. And then after the votes were counted, he tried to make it so certain votes weren't tabulated and weren't ultimately reflected in the will of the people. Here's the good news. We had a free and fair, safe and secure election. The will of the people was protected and respected. And Donald Trump took us to court 43 times. He went 0-43, and I went 43-0 as the Commonwealth's Attorney General, and we protected Pennsylvanians. We knew that he would try his same old tactics again. And in fact, we've already begun to see some litigation to try and make it harder for certain people's votes to count. About 9 months ago, I put together an election protection task force here in the Commonwealth, made up of lawyers, made up of election clerks, made up of law enforcement at the local, state, and federal level, and chaired by our Secretary of the Commonwealth, Al Schmidt. I should point out, Al is a Republican. I'm a Democrat, because we believe the administration of elections should be really nonpartisan or bipartisan exercises. And we are already and have been working. We've been doing tabletop exercises. We are ready to go for whatever Donald Trump throws our way. And most importantly, to protect the will of the people again here in Pennsylvania. And I'm confident we'll again have a free and fair, safe and secure election.
In your tabletops, and I was part of a lot of those when I worked in government after 9/11, I mean, it's your job to imagine the stickiest scenarios and then solve for them. Do you take Trump at his word, and do you watch the actions of his ally, the Speaker of the House, when they sort of dangle their coded language? Well, we'll only certify if it's totally free and fair. I mean, they count mail-in voting, which is legal, including in Pennsylvania, as something sort of on the bubble for them. Are you looking at everything they're saying in terms of solving for all scenarios?
Yeah, everything. And by the way, I'd point out that mail-in voting here in Pennsylvania was made legal with more votes from Republican lawmakers than Democratic lawmakers in the end. I mean, this should be non-controversial. We want to promote democracy, and the way you do that is by encouraging legal eligible voters to participate in the process. But since Donald Trump said he doesn't like it, then Republicans have lined up. Look, when it comes to our preparations, our tabletop exercises, we are thinking about everything from the stuff that Donald Trump and his allies say to mis and disinformation that might make its way out on the media. And I'm not suggesting MSNBC by any stretch, but something that has a national reach and then kind of infiltrates our politics and people's opinions. We're thinking about litigation and how that can be used as a tool to disenfranchise people. We're thinking about whether or not people are violent in our communities as a way to try and stoke fear or make it harder for people to access the ballot box. We're thinking about all of those things. And I want the good people of Pennsylvania to know We are prepared. And Republican and Democratic clerks alike in our 67 counties are prepared to do their jobs honorably, as they did last time, to make sure that we again have a free and fair, safe and secure election, and that the will of the people is respected.
The Commonwealth is in the news as another place that Donald Trump has targeted with lies about legal Haitian immigrants. I wonder if you can just tell us what's happening in Charleroi and tell me what you're prepared to do to protect your citizens, your constituents.
Yeah. Charleroi is a wonderful small town in a place called Washington County, Pennsylvania. So for those of you who aren't familiar, that's closer to kind of the Ohio-West Virginia border in the southwestern corner of our Commonwealth. It's a great community with wonderful people. And the truth is they've got some economic challenges. Instead of this would-be or wannabe president coming and trying to address the economic anxieties and the very real challenges there, instead, he's tried to throw gasoline on a fire in a wonderful community and target certain people in this community. When he targets them, it not only makes those migrants, those legal migrants, less safe, it makes us all less safe. Tearing down communities is not something we want from a would-be leader of this nation. We want a leader to lift people up and actually address the very serious challenges that they face. You know, Nicole, Lori and I are blessed with 4 children, and we try and teach them a lot of lessons, but the one underlying lessons is to love thy neighbor, right? I mean, I think that is something that we can all agree is central to how we try and raise our children. We should expect at least that from the person that wants to lead this nation. I want someone like Kamala Harris who looks to lift everyone up, no matter what they look like, where they come from, who they love or who they pray to. Not someone like Donald Trump who tries to tear people down, create others in our society, and make us all less safe. Charleroi is a great town. And you know what? Washington County, we don't need a wannabe politician from Washington, D.C. to step in and make us less safe. We're going to stand up with one another. We're going to lift one another up. We're going to address our economic challenges, as I'm doing every day as governor. And we're going to work with people, Democrat and Republican alike, who want to do things that are constructive and helpful, not things that are harmful to our communities, like what Donald Trump continues to spew.
I mean, I think you're right about the values that any parent, regardless of who they voted for in the past, is passing along to their children. But then how do you explain the closeness of the race in Pennsylvania?
Well, look, the race is close, and our last 2 presidential races have come down to 44,000 votes and 80,000 votes, about a point or less in our Commonwealth of 13 million people with about 9 million registered voters. The fact that it's close is not a shock. And listen, picking up that last yard or 2 in the red zone to get in the end zone, it's tough here. But here's the thing. I'd rather be us than them. I'd rather be Kamala Harris than Donald Trump, and here's why. I think she's beginning to play on his side of the field. She's been in rural communities competing for a vote. She's someone who I think has an economic message that's beginning to resonate with people who might not have been open to hearing it just a few weeks ago. She is someone who promises more economic opportunity and more freedom. Donald Trump, on his watch, we had less freedom and fewer jobs in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I think that there is a stark choice in this race. And while it is close, I'd rather be us than them.
You assembled an ideologically diverse coalition. You had many high-profile Republicans choosing you enthusiastically over Doug Mastriano. She, too, has assembled an almost historically ideologically diverse coalition. Would you deploy some of the Republicans that have endorsed her in places like Erie or other parts of the state? I mean, how did you deploy your Republicans for Shapiro to win in the numbers that you won?
Yeah. Well, look, I think it's really important that people understand that you're going to be a governor, or in Kamala Harris's case, a president, for all Pennsylvanians, for all Americans. And I think one of the most important ways we do that is by showing that we have support from rural, urban, suburban communities, men and women, people of all colors, people who come from all different places, and of course, people from different political parties. I think at a time where we've become so polarized politically, showing that you can reach across the aisle and not just attract someone's support in an election, but that you can govern in a way that keeps them as part of an inclusive coalition, something we've been able to do here in Pennsylvania. I think that's critically important. I also think it's important that we understand that we don't have to agree with an elected official on every single issue to vote for them, because we want people who are honorable. We want people who, as I talked about before, pass that basic test we set for our children of loving thy neighbor. We want someone who actually gives a damn about all of us, not just focused on themselves. Someone who's trying to lift up communities, not tear them down. There's a clear contrast in this race, and I think the more Kamala Harris can lean on people who maybe historically wouldn't have considered voting for a Democrat but are now, I think that's really, really powerful. And it's something I've done here in Pennsylvania. It's something I would encourage her to continue to do here in the Commonwealth and across the country.
What is it